Who comes first? Flyers? And when is the line drawn? Between employees and company. Where does one draw the line, how and when? Air India Express has hit turbulent weather. Flyers proving to be the fallout. Thousands of them left in the middle of nowhere, stranded as flights were cancelled last moment, wreaking havoc for their livelihoods, for their schedules, for their plans, their family plans, professional whatsoever. The flight disruptions have been reported at several airports including Kochi, Kozhikode, Delhi and Bengaluru, affecting both domestic and international services, particularly to various Gulf countries. Over 100, in fact, even up to 300 cabin crew members, mostly seniors, have reported mass sick leave since the evening of 7th May, resulting in more than 90 flight cancellations. In fact, over the last 2 years, from SpiceJet to Indigo to Air India to Vistara, there have been several mass sick leaves protests, leaving passengers in thin air. These are likely to continue, though there is pre-scheduled town hall with the Air India Express leadership as well. What is the trigger in this particular case? We'll get to that in a bit. And we'll get you some very interesting voices, including those who have been stranded, the cabin crew representatives, the former DGCA chiefs of this country, as well as a perspective from the management, any management that would run airlines for that matter. We'll get to that in a bit, but let's first listen to what some of the flyers had to say, those who were stranded.
So as you can see, this is the Air India booth, Air India Express booth. They have just cancelled the flight without informing us, and literally 2 hours before the flight they are sending an email/message stating that the flight is cancelled. So I would like to take this opportunity to put this on Twitter and just express how bad Air India Express services are, and just look at the crowd.
Higher officials yarume illaya? Ha? Irukku illa inga irukkume enga officer in charge of.
Actually, our flight was yesterday 10:30. We came here at 7:30 like that. But we wait for here till more than 6 hours. But the flight was cancelled. We are inside the airport for 6 to 7 hours. We didn't get any water, anything, nothing we get in.
Actually, I'm supposed to fly today at 8:30 to Muscat. I came here at 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I came to know it was cancelled. So then I fight with them so much. Then finally I got the ticket for tomorrow.
मैं भी एक दिन के लिए दिल्ली आया था जी, और कोई सोशल एंगेजमेंट थी घर में, तो सुबह जाना था, तो मैं भी अभी 3-4 घंटे अंदर बैठ के वापस जा रहा हूँ, और एक और फ्लाइट से जा रहा हूँ, इंडिगो से जा रहा हूँ। मैं वैसे ज़िंदगी में कभी एयर इंडिया से नहीं जाता हूँ। जब सिविल एविएशन मिनिस्टर था तो तब हड़ताल हो गई थी 40 दिन के लिए, और हमने फिर ये प्राइवेट एयरलाइंस लाए थे। तो हम सोच रहे थे कि अब सबक कुछ मिलेगा, लेकिन कोई सबक इनको मिलता नहीं है, और कैंसिल हो गई। तो सुबह ही बताना था कैंसिल हो गई, बेवकूफ़ क्यों बनाना सबको, बेचारे हज़ारों लोगों को भी अभी आधे घंटे बाद जाएगी, आधे घंटे बाद जाएगी, आधे 4 घंटे से, और अभी जाएगी नहीं, मुझे नहीं लगता ये जाएगी।
Well, a former minister, a former civil aviation minister, literally stranded high and dry like so many other passengers. That's the power of what we are unfolding before us. This almost seems deja vu. Remember last month, at least 50 Vistara flights were cancelled as pilots went on mass sick leave, so to say, alleging mismanagement and unfair salary revisions, as they were given summons to return back to work with preconditions, spinning the management into firefighting as they went into mass sick leaves. But what was the trigger this time? Well, the allegations are of unfair contractual systems, incompetence in leadership roles, salary disparity, workmen and women's protection, their rights, among several other demands which have been raised by those who are protesting. Seems more about regular employee rights, challenges within a merger ecosystem, and so forth. But what caused this lingering chaos? Employees claim they've not been heard despite repeated official complaints on mail. In a damage control mode, the Air India Express has shot out an internal communication assuring that company leadership is available for discussions at any time, even as they gear up for a pre-scheduled town hall expected tomorrow. Something that seems to be falling apart for now. In fact, a letter from the regional labour officer accessed by Mirror Now has some scathing observations terming the concerns of the union as genuine, stating that the management hasn't sent responsible decision makers to conciliation proceedings. If we can bring in this particular graphics on the screen about what we have accessed from the Labour Division. In fact, the regional labour officer has cited mismanagement, blatant violations of labour laws, accusing the HR department of trying to mislead conciliation officer, demanding for a high-level committee to inquire into grievances and corrective measures. Some very strong allegations. In fact, this is not just allegations. This is coming from, as I mentioned, the regional labour officer as well. Now, we're being joined by Devesh Agarwal, who is a chief analyst with BangalorAviation.com. I'm also being joined by Matosh Payapatil. His flight was cancelled earlier today. And SVS Subramaniam, who's a national executive member for the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. Well, first to you, Mr. Matosh. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Could you tell us the circumstances in which you were flying?
Yeah, of course. Good evening to all. First of all, thanks to hear me, because even now I didn't get any message from Air India. You know, now it's very common that every small companies are sending messages for their updations. But in this matter, this inconvenience, we didn't get any prior information. Actually, today morning, nearly 5:30, I have started from my house to airport, and then went there on time. But while I'm entering the airport, that policeman told me that your flight has been cancelled. I shocked. Then I asked him, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." Then I don't know what to do. Then he guided me to go to their office beside the airport. Then I went there. So there was a big crowd. So I was waiting there almost 1.5 hours. They told me that if you want to refund, it will take 7 to 14 days, working days. Then I told them, so you can arrange a journey, reschedule my journey. Then they told me that it will after 10th or 12th they can arrange. They don't have confirmation even that date. Then I waited more than 1.5 hours. Then,
Mr. Matosh, could you help us to understand where were you traveling to? Why were you traveling? Just for us to get a sense of what your journey was about.
Yeah. Actually, I'm traveling to Muscat, and today is my joining day. My employer, that company told me to join today, but I can't. Then I have sent a mail to the employer, but I didn't get any reply from them. I don't know what will happen.
Right. And you're saying you traveled almost 120 kilometers to get to the airport?
Yeah. Morning 5:30 started. Then after entering the airport only,
right.
I came to
Sir,
know that
what were the kind of scenes
cancelled.
that you saw at the airport?
Pardon?
What were the kind of scenes that you saw at the airport with the fellow passengers? Were there chaos? What was the kinds of interactions you saw? Were you...
Actually, there was a big crowd. Everyone hungry like me. Everyone waiting there, and there is no fan. There is no AC. We are all. There was a big crowd and waiting for their reply, but they are not responding well. They are sitting there and they are checking our tickets. They are asking, and there is no immediate direction, and they didn't provide any kind of refreshment. It was a bitter experience.
And once you got to know that your flight was cancelled, how long did you wait at the airport or did you return home?
I have waited more than 1.5 hours. Then I will came to my house afternoon. Morning 5:30 started this journey, and I came to my home afternoon.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your details, your experience with us. Let me also just get in our fellow panelists. And if you have any question at some point, please do raise your hands. We'll allow you to ask any question if you have as well. I'm also being joined by SVS Subramaniam right now, who is the National Executive Member for the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. You're representing the protesting crew members at this point, sir. What happened for such a last moment trigger?
Yeah, this is not actually, over the years, the issues have piled up. The management had no time to discuss with the employees. Several hundreds of mails were sent to the management. And when the issue was escalated to the RLC, CLC, they did not send proper officers to meet the RLC or CLC. The discussions did not continue beyond a certain point. The system failure is there. When post privatization, the entire lot of officers who were with Air India have come back to the Air India Express. Their mindset has not changed. They still believe that they are in the government department. They have not converted themselves into a private entity. The feudalistic behavior of the senior officers has had a cascading effect on the entire issue. The RLC and CLC also have very bitterly commented, as you said earlier. They have written several letters. We escalated this issue to the
RLC,
Honorable
to break
Civil
it down
Aviation
for our
Minister.
viewers, is Regional Labour Officer. I'm just clarifying it for our viewers to understand, sir.
Yeah, Regional Labour Commissioner. We escalated the issue to the Honorable Ministers for Civil Aviation and also the Secretary of Civil Aviation. But there was no intent on their part to come to a negotiating table, at least to hear the grievances. Settlement is a different thing. The management or the government was
so
not
how long has
intended
this been going on?
Yeah.
Since how long has these complaints been raised?
For the last 2-3 years, when it was in the government sector also. So
this is not essentially to do with the merger.
Sam Pitroda raised this racism issue today, but in Air India Express, it has been running after privatization. Now all of a sudden they say you are dark complexioned, you have no place here, you go. Your height does not match. After putting in 15 to 20 years of service in the airline, how can you increase your height or decrease your height? How can you change your complexion? All these things have cascading effect. The room sharing issue was a major
trigger. These are very, very strong allegations that you're making, sir. We don't have a response to these specific allegations, and we do hope that we would get something on this. These are very strong allegations that you're raising against the management, against the company, sir.
Exactly. We in Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh have a laid down principle. We work for the nation, we work for the industry, we work for the last priorities for the worker. When we work for the interest of the nation, our members flew in hundreds and thousands of sorties during COVID. You all know. They risked their lives. I lost several of my members in the line of duty. We didn't bother. We kept on working. Whenever the government deploys Air India Express flights to evacuate people, our people with a smiling face, they go and help the people. But the government or the management have failed us miserably. This has led to this situation.
India celebrated the courageous crew and the team of Air India Express that repatriated thousands of Indians from across the world during the pandemic. India is not going to forget that for sure. Thank you for raising the points that you have. We will come back to you for more concerns. Let me just go across to my third panelist at this point. Devesh Agarwal, you've heard both. You've heard the flyer and you've also heard the representative of the protesting crew members. How do you look at this as an aviation expert? And it's very important at this point. We all are very proud of India, of our aviation sector, of all that is being achieved. Even as we discuss this, we just hope we will be a very crucial bridge to possible solutions. And that's really the point of a discussion like this. Please.
I fully agree. Firstly, good evening, Sneha. Good evening to all your viewers. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on board your show. I am very sympathetic both with the gentleman who was the passenger. I am also sympathetic with the gentleman who's a union leader. I am reasonably critical of the Tatas because they have completely, in my opinion, mismanaged the situation. I bring people to, if you give me a few minutes, and I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate also here. In 2007, the government tried to merge Air India and Indian Airlines.
If you may, sir.
I said in 2007, the government tried to merge Air India and Indian Airlines. And even till 2024, 17 years after that merger, there is still this sort of, oh, he's an Indian Airlines person, I'm an Air India person, etc. That kind of fissure is still there in that airline. Unfortunately, Air India is a product of over 50 years of bureaucracy, and it is going to take a long time to eliminate that. Now, if you look at global mergers, whether it was, say, United with Continental or Northwest with Delta or American Airlines with US Air, or if you look at IAG, which is, the parent company of British Airways, Iberia, and others, they are all led by very strong aviation CEOs. Now, I'm not trying to say that Mr. Campbell Wilson is an ineffective person. He's a very nice person. He's a very capable person. He's an experienced person. But he cannot, or rather, I get a feeling sitting from outside, I could be very wrong, but I get a feeling that the Bombay House management has not empowered him enough. First. Number two, you're talking of an organization, the Tatas, which own the biggest HR-driven company in the world, which is TCS. And they are still not able to understand that they've got 4 different airlines, which is the erstwhile Air Asia, the erstwhile Air India Express, the erstwhile Air India, and Vistara. Each of these 4 organizations have got completely different cultures. They've got different thinking. In fact, the other day, I think it was a sister organization of Mirror Now, I think one of the, I think was it Economic Times or one of them, that turned around and they had written a story in which the Air India, some officer from Air India was quoted as saying, those Air India, Vistara guys, what have they achieved? Now, Vistara has achieved something very different when it comes to customer service, but because of the superiority attitude, exactly what Mr. Subramaniam said, this bureaucratic, feudalistic, oh, I am like the boss, I've been here in Air India for so many years, so I know better than everybody else in the world. That attitude is still continuing. Now, it is very, very difficult in the best of times to merge 2 organizations, and here you're trying to merge 4 completely different cultures. In fact, I would suggest that Mr. Chandrasekharan or somebody should take a step back. They need to bring a third party outside person, an HR organization, maybe somebody who can drive this merger. First, create a common corporate culture within these 4 organizations before you even attempt to merge them. And now to a little bit of, devil's advocate, and I'm going to, in a way, Mr. Subramaniam may not like this. I appreciate fully well that Air India Express and Air India went and rescued a lot of Indians, in all times of crisis. But that was a government-owned airline. This is now a private-owned airline. They do not own, or they do not need to give to the country that much that a government-owned airline did. And let's keep it in mind. Just 2 days back, if you recall, CRISIL, the credit rating agency, said that, in the next 5 years, Indian carriers are going to take over at least 50% of the international traffic out of India, which is, I think, currently at around 30% or so. They are competing whom? Against the Emirates, the Qatar Airways, the Air Arabias, the Etihads, the Bahrain, the Gulf Air,
Okay.
etc. And we all know
Okay.
that the entire Middle East, they don't have any concept of worker rights. The day they want to terminate you, you are out. You don't meet the standard. If you're not weighing so much, you're not that fair enough, you're not that beautiful enough, you're not that competent enough, they're going to just show you the door. You got no rights. So there is a complete, we have to look at the global.
That's unfair. That's very
I am not.
unfair, Devesh Agarwal.
I said
if
I'm
you're
playing
not
devil's
confident,
advocate.
no,
I'm fully.
just allow me
It
to
is.
finish. Let me just fathom what you just said right now. Even if you're playing the devil's advocate, sure.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're not competent, yes, you don't deserve the job. But if you're not fair, really?
Ma'am, Sneha ji, that is the problem. That is our competition. That is the conditions in which our competition competes with us. Now,
what competition are we talking about, Devesh? I don't get this.
I don't agree with
The
it.
world is a combination of so many.
Ma'am,
it's a combination of so many skin colors. I'm not saying you are advocating this, but if you are saying this is the industry standards, then it's absolutely wrong. Certainly, I get it. I get it. Certainly, by all means. I'm not saying you're advocating it.
Ma'am, in my company, we believe, and I have come from a background of absolutely non-discrimination. I do not care about anybody's race, sexual orientation, color, creed, anything. But I am saying these are the realities under which these airlines have to compete. I am not saying that this thing, I'm saying this is the conditions under which they have to compete. And I'm not saying what they're doing today is correct. But I'm also saying that it is something that this airline has to.
Allow me to just go to the other two as well. There's so much that I want to respond at this point because frankly, none in India are fair. Let's take it for that. We are not fair. Nobody in India is fair for that matter.
You're far more fairer than me. So I am in agreement with you.
I have makeup on, sir. But anyway, allow me to go to Mr. Devesh Agarwal, please. Sorry, allow me to go at this point to Mr. Mathosh, please. Mathosh, sir, I understand. I don't even know how much of this interests you, sir. Because all you may want to be knowing at this point is if you can take a next flight on the 10th or the 12th, if the flight services will be functioning. Isn't that the question on your mind?
Yeah, respected panelists, they are indicating the difficulties of the staff members. But passengers has to suffer all these things. And coming to your point, it is very difficult to face the situation like this. Some people can handle their travel to travel, but there are some people coming from. Today I met 2-3 people. They came from Nagarkovil and that border of Tamil Nadu. So they're really crying. They don't know what to do. Some people like that. So all these difficulties and passengers has to suffer. That cannot admit.
Right. Mathosh sir, what do you?
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Please finish.
Hello.
All right. Mathosh sir, if I can just go across very quickly to SVS Subramaniam, let me just try and understand if he will be able to give you an answer. SVS Subramaniam, not just Mr. Mathosh, but I think scores of flyers across India would be looking and wondering, not just India actually, different parts for that matter, but would be wondering if they'll be able to take a flight anytime soon without a cancellation. Would you at this point have a response to that?
Yeah, we never want to inconvenience our guests because it is our bread and butter. They are like gods to us. The situation has come to this solely because of the attitude of the management. Inept management, I would say. They conduct meetings, they don't bother to hear the employees. They sermonize and then close the meetings. But I have just now got a message that the management has reached out to the employees. Talks are now going on. We would expect a reasonable solution. But I would appeal through this
That's
channel
great
to
news.
the Tatas to invite, sit together, because if we sit together, lots of things can be resolved. Nobody wants to precipitate the situation. The Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh General Secretary, who has a membership of 1.5 crores in the country, has written 3 letters to Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Right.
And I'm sorry to say that we don't even get an acknowledgement for the letter that we have written. We have basically said Tatas is a very good brand.
Right.
We
Okay.
respect the brand. They look after their employees in all other segments. But unfortunately, when airlines has come, they are treating the employees very shabbily. I'm very sorry to say that. We don't want this situation to continue. We would respect Tatas. We respect Tatas very highly. We love to work under them. But at the same time, the management also should respect the rights of the employees, should care for the employees.
Okay. Devesh Agarwal, my last question to you, a minute. I just want to make a reference to a point that you said earlier when the repatriation flights were conducted, were undertaken. They were under the government. Now they are not. And they do not need to give as much as they had. But the truth remains, many of these crew members were part of those repatriation flights. So they may not have to give that much anymore, but the fact remains they have given a lot. So where does that then get into account?
As I said, firstly, I'm fully sympathetic. And as I said, my point about this thing, Mr. Subramanian himself said that, the management was talking about you're not fair enough, you're not tall enough, you're not whatever enough. I said these are certain realities of, the airline industry that we have to accept and understand. We don't have to, I'm sorry, we have to understand, we don't have to accept it. I would definitely urge Mr. Subramaniam that, see, Mr. Matosh is there as a passenger. If I was in his place, I would equally blame him as much as I would blame the management. The airline staff, let them go to work with a black band on their blouse or on their arm, on the sleeve, to signify that they have an issue. Gain the passenger's sympathy. Do not gain the passenger's, angst, or do not gain their anger. And that is exactly what the current, the sick out.
That's interesting.
They should not be doing that. I'm fully sympathetic with the way they are being mistreated. I agree with that they are being mistreated. They have given a lot. They should be honored. They should be treated well. There are certain realities that people have to live up to, and it may not be possible that what was prevalent in government service 3 years ago is possible under a private management. But definitely the last thing they should be doing is creating a disruption, because that only results in losing the respect of the airline. And ultimately, that Hindi saying, "Jis thali mein khate ho, usi mein ched kar rahe ho," you are ultimately hurting your employer. And when you hurt your own employer, you're hurting yourself. So I would definitely urge the employees of Air India Express.
I think very, very valid points from all of you. This is a difficult situation, but definitely something that the management should be able to sort out, because that's really their job. Not all demands may be reasonable, but there has to be a common meeting point. The situation needs to be sorted out, because thousands like Mr. Matosh are just waiting to get to their destinations, to get along with their livelihoods. And not just that, even just to go out with their families or get about doing their daily jobs that they need to, or fly for essentials. But livelihoods at stake at all sides. Thank you, Mr. Devesh Agarwal. Thank you, Mr. Matosh, for joining us despite all the stress that you would be having at your site. We just hope you and so many other flyers would be able to find a solution very soon. There would be a breakthrough with the talks that are happening right now, as well as SVS Subramanian. Thank you very much for joining us, for putting in that very important perspective as well.